She is not merchandise.
Why me?
Why me? Because someone had to!
In a galaxy ruled by chains, one choice can ignite rebellion.
I won't be cargo again. Then we fight.
The auction hall was suffocating with the weight of silence, broken only by the metallic clicks of the overseers pacing along the edge of the stage. 100 alien species crowded the chamber, each wrapped in shadows, their many eyes glowing with predatory curiosity as they waited for the next item to be dragged forward. Chains clinked, and the spotlight burned down on a small figure shoved into the center of the platform. She was no more than a child in appearance. Though her features betrayed she was not human, her hair shimmered like liquid silver under the harsh light, her skin faintly luminescent with markings that pulsed in rhythm with her frightened heartbeat. Her wide eyes, like molten gold, darted across the hall, searching, pleading, though no one returned her gaze with mercy. The auctioneer, a broad reptilian being with a voice like grinding stone, sneered as he announced her origins. Last survivor of a conquered world, rare, fragile, defiant. The crowd stirred, muttering in hushed tones, but when the bidding began, silence returned. No hand rose. No offer came. The girl was too wild, too dangerous in spirit, too broken to be worth owning. Shame washed over her face, and she lowered her head. The auctioneer slammed his claw on the stand, furious. "Will no one claim her?" he bellowed. And in that echoing hall, against the sneers and indifference of countless species, a single human hand rose into the air. The gesture seemed almost absurd at first. One hand, lifted high, trembling only slightly, belonging to a man who looked far too ordinary for such defiance. He stood near the back rows, dressed in the simple, weather-worn attire of a cargo hauler. His face bore the fatigue of long journeys through unkind space, yet his eyes burned with an intensity that silenced the laughter rising around him. The crowd turned, mocking, whispering. Why would a human, one of the weaker species in the galactic hierarchy, dare to intervene? The auctioneer narrowed his reptilian eyes, incredulous. "You," he spat, pointing a claw toward the man. "You would bid on this creature?" But the man did not flinch. His hand remained raised, unwavering, even as alien aristocrats cackled, even as venomous whispers filled the chamber. "She is not merchandise," he said finally, his voice steady, carrying through the hall with a clarity that startled even him. "I will take her." A heavy pause followed, stretching into eternity. The alien crowd exchanged looks of disbelief and disdain. Some sneered, others smirked, but none dared challenge the raw conviction in his tone. The girl lifted her head, her golden eyes wide, disbelieving. For the first time in what felt like ages, hope sparked within her trembling chest. The auctioneer's tail lashed against the floor, rattling the steel beneath it. "Do you understand what you're doing, human?" His words dripped with venom. "This thing is not a pet. It will claw at you, bite you, curse your existence. It carries the memory of war, the fire of rebellion. No one wants it because no one can control it. And you—" His claws clicked together, as if snapping the man's neck in his imagination. "You think you are different?" The man's lips tightened into the ghost of a smile, though his eyes never wavered from the girl. "I don't want to control her," he replied simply. "I only want to give her back what was stolen, her freedom." Murmurs erupted throughout the hall, some scoffing at his foolishness, others angered by his audacity. Freedom was not a concept easily spoken in a place built on chains. To the girl, his words were a thunderclap that shattered the fog of despair around her. No one had spoken of freedom in her presence since her world burned. The weight of his promise hit her like a storm, and she struggled to hold back the tears that welled in her golden eyes. She had been abandoned by her people, forgotten by fate, but perhaps not entirely. The auctioneer, though seething, was bound by the rules of the trade. A bid, once made and unchallenged, could not be denied. With a snarl, he slammed the gavel down. "Sold!" he spat, the word dripping with disgust. The chains around the girl rattled as she was dragged from the platform and shoved toward the man. Her steps were hesitant, each one heavy with disbelief, as though she feared this was some cruel trick. When she finally reached him, her eyes rose to meet his, searching for deception. Instead, she found only a quiet strength, a tired but unwavering resolve etched into every line of his face. Gently he reached out, not to seize her, not to bind her further, but simply to take the chain from her wrists and let it fall away. The metallic clatter echoed louder than any cheer could have. For the first time since her capture, her arms were free. She rubbed at the red marks on her skin, her breath shuddering, her lips parting as though to speak, but no words came. The hall, once buzzing with cruel amusement, had fallen into a tense silence. The human had done what no one else dared. He had made her his, only to set her free. As they walked out of the chamber together, the stares of 100 alien eyes followed, some filled with ridicule, others with something darker, resentment, even hatred. The human knew the risks he had taken. He had just challenged the unspoken order of things, where power dictated ownership and weakness was condemned to chains. To claim freedom in such a place was to spit in the face of empires. Yet he did not falter. Step by step, he guided the girl through the hostile crowd, his presence a shield against the venomous whispers and threatening glares. The girl, still trembling, kept close to him, her golden eyes flickering between fear and a fragile, growing trust. She could not understand why he had chosen her, why he had risked scorn and danger for someone broken and unwanted. But in the rhythm of his steady stride, in the unyielding grip with which he held her arm, not harsh, but protective, she began to sense the answer. He had not acted out of pity, nor out of arrogance. He had acted because he believed, against all odds, that her life was worth more than chains. And as they vanished into the shadows of the station's corridors, the first fragile thread of an unbreakable bond was woven between them. The corridors of the station stretched endlessly, filled with the stench of oil, rust, and alien sweat. Traders barked their prices, machines hissed steam, and slaves shuffled by under the weight of chains. The man walked with quiet determination, the girl clinging close as though any moment someone might drag her away again. Her bare feet barely made a sound against the metal floor, but her golden eyes flicked nervously at every shadow. She had learned through endless nights of captivity that safety was an illusion, always torn away when least expected. Yet beside him something felt different. He did not march with the arrogance of a master or the casual cruelty of an owner. Instead, his every step seemed to promise, "I will not let them touch you again." The girl could not yet trust it, not fully, but some fragile part of her clung to that possibility. As they reached the docking bay, the man keyed open the hatch to a weather-worn cargo ship. It was no grand vessel. Patches of rust scarred its hull, and its engines wheezed in protest with every cycle. But to the girl, it was not a cage. It was a way out. He gestured her inside. "Welcome home," he said softly. The interior of the ship was cluttered but warm in a way she did not expect. Nets hung with supplies, tools littered the workbench, and a faint hum of the reactor filled the air like a steady heartbeat. She wandered a few hesitant steps in, her silver hair shimmering faintly under the ship's dim lights. Every muscle in her body remained tense, waiting for the trap to spring. But nothing came. The man moved past her, setting controls on the console, preparing for departure with practiced ease. He did not order her, did not strike her, did not so much as raise his voice. Instead, he looked at her with a gentleness that unsettled her more than cruelty ever had. "You're safe here," he said, as if safety were something real, something more than a forgotten word. The girl hugged herself, torn between disbelief and desperate longing. She had lost everything, her family, her people, her world, but in that small ship, she felt the faint stirrings of something she thought had died with them, the chance to belong. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to breathe without fear, choking every inhale. When the ship tore free of the station's gravity well, stars spilled across the viewport, endless and cold. The girl pressed her face against the glass, her golden eyes wide with awe. To her, space had always been bars. She had seen it only through the slits of cages, only as the void between one prison and another. Now, for the first time, it stretched before her as possibility. The man watched her silently from the pilot's seat, hands steady on the controls. He did not interrupt her wonder, did not claim credit for the gift he had given. Instead, he let her breathe, let her see the galaxy not as a cell, but as a horizon. After a long silence, she turned to him, her voice fragile as cracked glass. Why did you choose me?" The question carried all her fear, her confusion, her desperate hope. He did not answer immediately. He simply looked at her, his tired eyes reflecting the stars. Finally, he said, "Because someone had to." The simplicity of it shook her. Not destiny, not strategy, not gain, just choice. For the first time, she realized the universe could still surprise her. In the days that followed, she learned the rhythms of his ship. He cooked simple meals, nutrient blocks, and reheated rations. Nothing grand, but always enough to share. He repaired the engines with grease-stained hands, humming quietly to himself. Sometimes, when he thought she was asleep, he sat in the pilot's chair staring at the stars, his face carved with loneliness. She began to realize he was as much a refugee as she was, though his prison had not been chains, but solitude. Slowly, carefully, she began to speak to him. At first, only small words. Yes, no, thank you. But each time his eyes lit with a quiet pride, as though her voice was the most precious sound in the galaxy. She began to ask questions, too, about Earth, about humans, about why he traveled alone. He answered patiently, never mocking her ignorance, never pushing her when silence weighed too heavy. In his presence, she discovered something she had thought extinct: kindness without price. Each word they exchanged stitched together the ragged edges of her heart, forming something she feared to name: trust. Yet shadows lingered even in the warmth of the ship. The galaxy was not blind to what he had done. Whispers spread through the trade routes, rumors of a human who had dared defy the auction. Some mocked his foolishness, but others hungered for vengeance. The slavers he had humiliated wanted their property back. And worse, they wanted to make an example of him. He knew the danger would come. He saw it in the encrypted transmissions he ignored, in the suspicious echoes on the scanners. Still, he said nothing to the girl. Why burden her with fear when she had only just begun to hope? But in the quiet hours, when the ship drifted between stars, he tightened his grip on the controls, knowing the peace they shared was fragile. The girl, sensing the weight he carried, said nothing, but her golden eyes studied him with growing intensity. She did not yet understand why he had chosen her, but she was beginning to realize the cost. And in the silence between them, a seed was planted, not just of trust but of resolve. If danger came, she would not let him face it alone. The first sign of trouble came not as a fleet, but as a shadow. The scanners flickered with distortions, as if space itself trembled. The man frowned, adjusting the controls, his hands steady though his heart quickened. He knew these tricks. Pirates and slavers often cloaked their vessels, hiding in the dark between stars. The girl sensed his unease, her golden eyes narrowing as she pressed close to the viewport. A faint ripple tore across the black, and then a jagged silhouette emerged, a slaver frigate, its hull scarred, its engines burning with sickly green light. The sight struck her like a knife. Her breath quickened, her hands trembled. Memories of cages, of chains digging into her skin, of cold laughter and cruel hands. Everything came rushing back. She whispered, almost to herself, "They've come for me." The man reached across, his calloused hand closing firmly but gently over hers. "They've come for us," he corrected, his voice steady as iron. For a heartbeat, she saw not her captors, not her nightmares, but the reflection of herself in his gaze, someone worth fighting for. And in that moment, she understood that he would not run. Not if it meant abandoning her. The slaver frigate hailed them, its transmission cutting through the ship like a snarl. "Return the merchandise," a voice hissed, dripping with venomous amusement. "Do so quietly, and perhaps we'll let you crawl away alive." The man's jaw clenched. He flicked the comm switch, his voice calm but edged with steel. "She's not merchandise, and she's not yours anymore." Silence followed for a heartbeat. Then a chorus of cruel laughter spilled from the speakers. "You think yourself a hero, human?" the voice mocked. "You think you can steal from us and live? We will peel your ship apart. We will take what's ours, and we will make you watch." The girl shivered, clutching the fabric of his sleeve. For years she had learned that resistance was punished, that defiance was crushed beneath iron boots. Yet he did not bow, did not yield. He cut the comm, his expression unreadable, and began keying commands into the ship's systems. "Strap in," he told her softly. She obeyed, her heart pounding, torn between terror and awe. She had never seen anyone face the slavers without breaking. In his calm defiance, she felt the stirrings of courage in herself, fragile but real. The frigate moved with predatory grace, engines flaring as it closed the distance. The man's ship was smaller, weaker, not built for combat. The girl knew the odds. She had seen ships like his torn apart, lives snuffed out as easily as breath. Yet he did not hesitate. His hands flew across the console, rerouting power, forcing the weary ship to answer his will. "Hold on," he warned, and with a violent shudder, the cargo vessel dived into a desperate maneuver. Lasers streaked past, burning through the void where they had been seconds before. The ship groaned under the strain, metal screaming in protest, but it endured. The girl clutched her harness, her golden eyes wide, fear and exhilaration battling within her. She could feel his determination in every turn, every reckless move. He was not fighting to win glory, nor even to escape. He was fighting to protect her, to keep the promise he had made in the auction hall. For the first time, she did not see herself as a burden, a chain around another's neck. She saw herself as someone worth risking everything for. And in that realization, her fear began to burn into something sharper: resolve. The slavers pressed harder, their weapons scorching the void, their voices taunting over open channels. "Surrender, human. We'll spare your miserable life if you hand her over. She's nothing. A failed experiment, a broken prize. Not worth the blood you spill." The girl's chest tightened. Those words had been her truth for so long, that she was nothing, that her worth had been measured only in chains. But now, as she looked at the man beside her, sweat beading on his brow, eyes locked on the stars with unyielding focus, she knew the slavers lied. She was not nothing. She was everything to him, enough to risk his life, enough to defy an empire. Her trembling stopped. She unbuckled her harness, ignoring his startled glance, and stumbled toward the console. "Tell me what to do," she said, her voice steady for the first time. He shook his head sharply. "Stay down, you'll get hurt." But she refused. "No, I won't be cargo again. If you fight, I fight too." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of straining engines. Then slowly he nodded, and in that small gesture, she felt something ignite inside her that had been buried since her world burned. Together, they worked the ship like two halves of a single heartbeat. He handled the engines, pushing the vessel beyond its limits, while she managed the shields, her nimble fingers adapting quickly to the alien controls. Warnings blared, sparks flew, but they held on. The frigate loomed larger in the viewport, its shadow swallowing the stars, yet they did not break. With every desperate maneuver, the girl felt the chains of her past loosening, replaced by the thrill of choice, her choice. She was no longer a caged prize waiting to be claimed. She was a fighter standing beside someone who believed in her. The slavers, enraged by their defiance, poured fire into the void. But each blast that failed to claim them only fueled her determination. In the chaos, she turned to him, her voice fierce, golden eyes blazing. "We won't let them take me again." His lips curved into the faintest smile, pride flickering through the exhaustion. "No," he agreed, his voice steady. "We won't let them take us." And in that shared defiance, amidst fire and fury, the fragile bond they had woven transformed into something unbreakable. Not just protector and protected, but partners, bound by survival, by hope, and by the promise of freedom. The battle dragged on, a dance of survival against impossible odds. The ship rattled with each near miss, alarms screaming as systems strained to hold together. The girl's hands flew over the controls, sweat trickling down her brow, yet her golden eyes burned with fierce determination. The man guided the ship with steady precision, his every maneuver threading them through firestorms of plasma and shrapnel. The slavers grew frustrated. They had expected an easy kill, a terrified human begging for mercy. Instead, they found resistance, defiance so raw it unsettled even their hardened hearts. "Enough!" their commander snarled over comms. "Target their engines. Tear them apart." The frigate shifted, its weapons locking on. The girl's chest tightened as she realized they could not evade forever. But then in the chaos, she saw something on her display, a distortion in the void, a gravitational anomaly tugging at their sensors, a collapsed star remnant, its gravity well hidden in the dark. To approach was madness, certain destruction, yet her instincts screamed otherwise. "There!" she pointed, her voice urgent. If we angle through the gravity field, their frigate will struggle to follow. He glanced at her, surprise flickering, then nodded without hesitation. He trusted her. With a sharp pull on the controls, he hurled the ship toward the abyss. The void twisted around them as they plunged into the anomaly's pull. Space itself bent, stars stretching into rivers of light as the ship groaned under crushing forces. The girl gritted her teeth, fingers dancing across the console to stabilize the shields. The man fought the controls, every muscle in his arm straining as if he were wrestling with the universe itself. Behind them, the frigate roared into pursuit, but its bulk worked against it. Its massive frame buckled under the anomaly's pull, engines struggling to compensate. The girl's heart pounded as she watched the readings spike. The frigate caught in the star's invisible grasp. "They can't hold it," she whispered. The man's eyes narrowed, sweat dripping down his temple. "Then we make sure." With a calculated twist, he angled their ship just beyond the event horizon's reach, riding the razor's edge of destruction. The frigate, too heavy, too slow, failed to mimic the maneuver. With a scream of metal and a flash brighter than a sun, it was torn apart, vanishing into the void. Silence followed, terrifying, beautiful silence. The girl sagged back in her seat, breathless. They had not just survived, they had won. The aftermath settled over them like a heavy cloak. Sparks sputtered from the consoles, the reactor hummed weakly, and the ship bore the scars of their desperate flight. Yet it still lived, and so did they. The girl's chest heaved as she tried to comprehend what had happened. She had faced her nightmares, the slavers, their chains, their cruel laughter, and for the first time she had not broken. She had fought side by side with him, and together they had shattered the jaws of the predators who hunted her. Slowly she turned to him. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly on the controls, but his eyes still held that unshakable fire. "We made it," she whispered, her voice fragile but steady. He gave a faint nod, his lips curving into the smallest of smiles. "We did." Something unspoken hung between them then, heavier than words. Gratitude, yes, but also something deeper, something forged in fire and fear. She reached out hesitantly, her fingers brushing his. For a moment he froze, then let his hand close over hers. No chains, no bargains, just a choice, freely made. In the quiet days that followed, as they drifted through safer space, the girl began to change. No longer did she huddle in corners waiting for cruelty to fall. She moved freely about the ship, her laughter tentative but real, her curiosity blossoming. She asked him endless questions about Earth's oceans, about the taste of fruit, about what it meant to watch a sunrise without fear. He answered each one with patience, painting for her a world she had never known. In turn, she shared pieces of her past, fragmented memories of her world before it fell. The songs her people sang beneath twin moons, the names of constellations long gone. Slowly, piece by piece, they stitched each other back together. Yet even in these quiet moments, shadows lingered. She could feel it in the way he sometimes stared into the dark, his eyes heavy with burdens unspoken. He had saved her. Yes. But she began to wonder, who would save him from the ghosts he carried? It was on the edge of an uncharted system, where the stars burned faint and red, that she finally asked. They sat together in the galley, the remnants of a meal between them. "Why were you at that auction?" she asked softly, golden eyes searching his face. For a long time he said nothing, his gaze fixed on the scars of his hands. Finally he spoke, his voice low. "Because once, a long time ago, I couldn't save someone I loved." The words struck her like a blade, heavy with grief. He did not elaborate, but the pain in his eyes told her enough. She reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "You saved me," she whispered. He looked at her then, truly looked, and in her golden eyes he saw not just the reflection of his failure, but the proof that he had changed its ending. For the first time in years, his shoulders eased, just slightly. And in that fragile silence, a bond deeper than survival was forged, one built not on chains of obligation, but on the choice to stand together, no matter what awaited them among the stars. The stars stretched endlessly, but peace was fleeting. Word of their defiance spread faster than starlight, whispered across smuggler dens and slaver holds. The destruction of the frigate made them legends in some eyes and targets in many more. The man knew this. Every time he checked the comms and found encrypted threats, every time he recalibrated the ship's failing systems, he felt the storm closing in. Yet the girl was no longer the trembling captive he had first freed. She walked the corridors of the ship with quiet confidence, her silver hair catching the dim light, her golden eyes burning with resolve. She trained with him, learned how to handle tools, how to navigate stars, even how to read the faint flickers of scanner anomalies. She no longer asked if she was worth saving. She had begun to ask how she could help him survive. One night, as they drifted in the orbit of a silent world, she stood beside him at the viewport. "They'll keep coming," she said quietly. He nodded, his reflection hard in the glass. "Then we'll keep standing." She turned to him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Not you, we." The storm came sooner than either expected. A coalition of slavers, angered by their humiliation, pooled resources to hunt them down. 3 ships this time, not one. Engines howled as the ambush closed in around their battered vessel, cutting off every escape route. The girl's stomach twisted, fear clawing at her chest. But she was no longer the creature who cowered in chains. She ran to the console, her fingers moving with precision born from desperation and practice. The man gave her a sharp nod, already pushing the ship into evasive maneuvers. Laser fire split the void, shields flaring under the onslaught. Sparks rained from the ceiling, alarms shrieking, yet neither of them broke. "They'll tear us apart," she hissed. He shook his head, eyes locked on the chaos ahead. "Not if we tear free first." His hands moved like lightning, rerouting power, overloading the engines. The ship screamed, vibrating violently as though it would disintegrate. But he pushed harder. She grabbed his arm, her voice fierce. "If we die, then we die free." He looked at her, and in that moment, he knew she was no longer a survivor clinging to hope. She was his equal, his partner in defiance. The overloaded engines ignited, hurling their vessel into a desperate slingshot maneuver around the gravity well of a nearby gas giant. The 3 slaver ships gave chase, their weapons cutting the dark. The girl worked furiously, rerouting shield power, plotting trajectories, her hands moving as if guided by instinct. The man's face was carved with determination, every muscle straining as he fought to keep the ship intact. The void roared around them, a storm of plasma and gravitational tides, yet together they navigated the chaos. One of the slaver ships miscalculated, its hull torn apart as it plunged too close to the gas giant's crushing pull. Another fell to a desperate countermeasure, a mine. They deployed in the storm of debris, detonating in a flash that consumed the predator. Only one remained, relentless, unyielding. Its commander snarled over comms. "You cannot escape forever, human! You and your pet will crawl back to the chains where you belong." The girl's golden eyes blazed as she leaned over the console, her voice cutting like a blade. "I am not his pet. I am free." And with a final calculated strike, they funneled every scrap of power into the engines, breaking through the blockade into open stars. When the silence finally returned, when the last echoes of pursuit faded into the distance, they slumped in their seats, exhausted but alive. The ship was scarred, battered, barely holding together. Yet it still flew, and so did they. The girl leaned back, her chest heaving, laughter bubbling up unbidden. It was shaky, raw, but filled with a joy she had never known. The man glanced at her, and for the first time in what felt like years, he smiled, not the faint, weary curve he often wore, but a true smile, alive and unburdened. "We did it," she whispered. He nodded, his eyes softening. "We did." They sat in silence, letting the weight of survival settle. The girl turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "Do you ever wonder why you chose me?" she asked. He met her gaze, his voice steady. "Because when everyone else looked away, I couldn't." She swallowed, her throat tight, and for the first time she believed it fully. Not pity, not chance, choice. And in that truth, she found something stronger than survival, belonging. Time passed, measured not in chains or cages, but in stars. Together, they became wanderers of the galaxy, not running but living. Every system they crossed, every station they visited, their story followed. Of a human who dared raise his hand when no one else would, and of a girl once broken who became something unshakable. They were hunted, yes, but also whispered of with awe. To the desperate, they were symbols. To the enslaved, they were hope. and to each other they were more than survivor and savior. They were family. One night, as they drifted beyond the rim of charted space, the girl stood at the viewport, her golden eyes reflecting the endless dark. She no longer saw it as a prison. She saw it as a canvas. "Where do we go now?" she asked softly. The man joined her, his tired eyes alight with something brighter than duty. "Anywhere we want." She smiled then, a radiant, unbroken thing, and placed her hand in his. In the silence of the stars, two voices once alone now stood together, and the universe itself seemed just a little less cold.